Hello everybody, welcome to the Repurposing show for this week. I hope you are all well. Hello to everybody in the chat room, everybody listening live, listening on the phone, listening to the podcast afterwards from download. A very interesting discussion coming up today after a few updates. We've got just the panel on today, essentially, and we're going to be discussing the topic we only just got to at the end of the last show. I was going to say the last of the end show. That would not be correct. The end of the last show, about what our destination looks like at the end of this entire process that we're going to be discussing. And I have a specific reason for doing that, which we'll explain in some detail before we really get started. And we're going to actually start the show with some updates. But first of all, I'll actually bring out the panel, starting with ladies first. Hope, how are you today?
I'm doing wonderful, happy and excited to be here. Can't wait for today's show.
Excellent. And Rena, how are you today?
I'm very well, and good morning and good afternoon and good evening, depending on where you are in the world.
Yeah, got to love time zones.
Yeah.
There's a little radio show that Brad Smits managed to get Scott and I on, which airs in South Carolina on a Saturday morning, but it's actually 11 o'clock on Saturday night when we do the show here in Australia. That can be a bit tricky.
Did you get some sleep?
Oh, yeah. But, it just gets a little tricky. And speaking of Scott, how are you, Scott? Off with the mute.
Hello, everyone. Good to be here. Very good. It's chasing that mute button around the screen as to where it's been put.
Aha. Yeah, it's a bit like playing a computer game sometimes. You never know where the mute button will end up. The way Skype likes to drop it around the screen. Minor problem. So, welcome panel, and we're all pretty revved up to have this particular discussion today. We've all got essentially the same intention, slightly different on the details, but that's what this discussion is all about. And we're going to be trying to develop a very specific idea, which we'll open up the lines for people's views on towards the end of the show, and get your views as well, because at this point there's a concept called consensus, which is one that I'll be introducing. I think I'll do it right at the start, because I think we need to digest that one a little bit as we go through. In fact, I was going to do it just kind of at the end of the discussion, or towards the end, but I might do that at the start, because it's very, very important that voices are heard and views are put. However, we've got a couple of things to do first. First of all, we've got to have an update from Joe and Vanessa Bragg, the lovely folk who will be running the Lake Conjola meeting in less than 2 weeks now. Central New South Wales coast, wonderful venue. Joe and Vanessa, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Hi, Chris. Hi, everybody.
Excellent. Good to have you back again. We're just really checking in with you guys.
Everything's...
Yeah. Go ahead, Joe. We're just checking in to see how it's going. So.
Yeah, everything's moving along extremely well. The space of gathering in the shed is appearing to come forward a lot better than I thought.
Because you've got that really big shed space that you were repurposing, if you will, for this particular occasion.
Yes, we've reclaimed half of it, which is a fairly large space anyhow. So, we'll be starting to put the kitchen and stuff into it today. So it's all coming together extremely well.
Excellent. And roughly how many people are looking like coming at this stage?
We're sitting at about, I think there was a bit earlier, we're sitting at 31 at the moment. So we've still got some space and some more. If anybody would still wants to come, and there's plenty of camping space as well. We've got a couple of campers at the stage in a bus. So, yeah, we've still got some more room if anybody would like to come along.
Sounds excellent. Look, I'm sure we'll pick up there'll be more people turning up, and there's a few locals down here I've got to check in with and find out whether they're actually making it up there. I'll encourage them to send the form in. Now, you wanted to remind people, Joe, to send that form in.
Yeah, the form's just going to help us to establish the bedrooms and the food that we need to start to think about in terms of whether there's any special dietary requirements. So it just gives us a little bit of lead time on that. So, it does feel like a little bit of old energy. Let's all fill in a form, but it just will help with a little bit of the organisation. Joe and I have found that while we've been in the physical process of doing and moving stuff and, getting the bits, that the energy doesn't build. So we are finding it really interesting to just hold a balance between being and doing in the lead up to this weekend. And the energy has shifted somewhat in the last, I'd say, 4 or 5 days as well. Now that we can see it from this end, that it's definitely all doable. And so it's like the energy has opened up here. So yeah, we're just looking forward to it now. It's starting to feel that it's just going to be a great weekend. And talking to some of the people that have rung in, I just, when we're all together, it's just going to be a great buzz hearing people's stories, because the conversations we've had already have just been expanding.
Excellent. Now, also just to remind people that the itinerary that's been put forward is flexible and fluid. It's going to be probably shifted over the weekend. The main features, of course, will be, meal times and 1 or 2 other things, which will happen. But we do have, the ability to actually shift it in any direction that we decide to do. So the first couple of sort of get-togethers over the weekend, there'll be some people there on Friday, and I'd say by the time we get to Saturday morning, and Joe and I haven't discussed this, and I haven't discussed it with Vanessa, but I suspect what will happen is that first real get-together on Saturday morning is where we'll really decide what the actual itinerary is. I strongly suspect that. So it's going to be whatever we need it to be.
Yep. Chris, I was also going to say, I think you said that most people will arrive on the Friday. We've actually got our first person arriving tomorrow. Kobe is coming up tomorrow. Yes, tremendous. If you're listening, Kobe, well done.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, so he's rocking up a little bit earlier, and there's a couple that are coming on the Wednesday, Thursday as well. So, look, as I said, the energy has moved around here, and it's now an open playground for us to start working with it. So anyone who's out and about and, passing this way or wants a bit of a, break, come and join it, because I just think it's going to be something quite different.
Well, also, actually, I hope I said some people will arrive on Friday, because I actually don't expect everyone to turn up on Friday. It'd be great if they did. It will be tremendous. But I'm really pleased you're getting a bit of help early, actually. That'll make the setup even easier for you.
Yeah. I hope he's not too tired after driving up, because he was listening last week to the show. So rest up, Kobe.
Sounds like you've got some work cut out for you. Now, look, the other thing
no, it's all good.
The other thing too, the costing per day for food, etc. I'm not sure that we've actually put that out on this show. Did you actually come to a final figure at this stage?
Yeah, as per that. Haven't got it in front of me at the moment.
It's $33 a day, and that's all the food, and there'll be snacks and fruit and bits and pieces during the day, and tea and coffee available. We're not charging anything for the accommodation, so you're really paying for food only, and then a contribution towards things like toilet paper and hiring some toilets, because we're not fully plumbed everywhere, but we want to make sure that everything's covered. So that will just be a minor contribution towards that. So we really just want to keep the costs down. Mm-hmm. It was interesting as figures started to work. The 33s to me are very much about an integration energy. And so when we kind of did some sums and came to the 33, I just thought that it really put the purpose of the weekend as we're really integrating this energy into a living capacity now. We know we're the one people. We feel that inside, and we hold the essence true to us.
Mm-hmm.
But now we're integrating that into our living, and this is why I just encourage people, if you are around, if you can be here, this is feeling it in the core of you and holding that true. So, and the 3 and 3 adds to 6, and 6 is the love energy. So it just feels like a really nice, exchange contribution. And I can tell you, it's not about a money-making thing here. We have been as frugal as we can be, but we will still have something that's pretty great for everyone to utilise.
There's also, even if you can come today, as I say, we can put it out on the itinerary that's up on the website. The costs are actually on the bottom of that itinerary.
Yeah, and there's a half rate for children as well. So yeah, it's all there, and we're open to talk to people as well. But that just feels at this stage feels like the contribution that also engages you in the energy of the weekend.
And we also have broken it down on the last day to a half-day rate, so it's we're as flexible as people need to be. Like, it's more about getting people here and doing what we all need to do.
Yeah, look, I think, Joe and Vanessa, once people get there and experience the venue and the location, especially if you like the beach and the forest, because it sounds like you've got both, I think it'll make a fantastic kind of initial meeting point for us all in this country. And for anyone that comes overseas, as well,
yep.
It'll make a tremendous place where we can springboard off to, community development elsewhere throughout this country.
Yeah.
And that's what it feels. It just feels that this is just it's like a platform for us to be together and build that energy on. So I'm starting to feel excited. Last week it was like, wow, what have we done? But it felt right, and just go with the flow and follow those intuitions about, yes, we've done the right thing. But they're sitting in a different place this week. It just feels like it's all coming together. And like I said, the conversations have really shown us that the energy has moved into that gathering. We're in the gathering space. Even the lead up over the next 2 weeks, we are gathering universally and collectively. We are already gathering.
Beautiful. Excellent. Okay, guys. Well, we'll leave it there for this week, unless you've got anything else you need to pop in before we go.
I was just wondering if you could mention the website. Could you mention the website for people?
Please put out the website for the occasion.
So it's opal, OPAL, globalvillage.com. And the opal stands for One People's Ascended Living, and it also has the qualities of hope and clarity and moving from one energy into another, that the qualities of an opal. So hence the opal, and that's the only reason it came about, and it just feels like a nice kind of contribution to the weekend as well, to work under those attributes.
Fantastic. Okay, that's Opal Global Village, all one word, .com. Very simple website. It's really just got some images and the form and some contact details. So that's all we need at this stage. And look, thanks guys for your update this week. We'll be doing a final update next week before the actual weekend, and should be absolutely fantastic, especially to meet everybody.
Great.
It'll be tremendous, really tremendous.
And I just wanted to put out a thank you to anyone who's been sending it here. I know last week we talked about the Mama Bears getting involved, and just putting it out. Thanks everybody. Thanks all of you doing people. We're feeling it, so I really appreciate it.
Excellent. It's amazing we can do things remotely.
Yeah,
it blows me
exactly.
away. So we'll talk to you folks. We'll talk to you folks next week. So have a great week, and give a hey to your first guest when they arrive.
I will. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Bye for now.
Bye all.
Bye all.
Cheers, guys.
Okay. Well, that's sounding fantastic, actually. Really good. Now, speaking of hope and opal, if opals, did you want to say something, Scott? Did I hear an intake of breath?
Oh, I did, actually. There was regarding this community event that is planned over there with Joe,
mm-hmm.
there's I just wanted to share a quick little anecdote from yesterday. I went on a little drive out into the Swan Valley and had a barbecue with some people that I hadn't met before through a family friend. And the whole afternoon they were talking about community and how close they were out in this little Swan Valley area. And it was really absolutely fascinating, which is kind of like the destination thing that we're talking about a little later on in this show.
Yeah.
And the only thing that spoiled it was the inevitable, seemingly, discussion about government that popped up. My vision of the destination is going to one of those barbecues minus the discussion on government.
Yeah, I can totally concur with that. Consciousness is bubbling, so high levels of consciousness are bubbling so close to the surface now that it's not going to take much for everything to pop through. But that's a whole other different discussion. Really appreciate that, Scott, because I'm having reports of similar sorts of conversations from a lot of other people. It's really coming into focus.
Yeah, and I'm finding myself smiling as Scott was saying that.
Indeed. And Hope, were you smiling too?
Oh, absolutely.
Now, Vanessa mentioned the opal aspect of this meeting, one people ascended living, and the qualities of the opal were, hope, clarity, and moving from one end to the other. Well, we have Hope here with us, and we'd like to move her from one energy to another, that is from the United States to Australia, for this event. And in order to do that, Hope actually needs some extra funding. Because we're going to be the recipient of her incredible energy and all of her practical skills and knowledge, we're going to ask the Australian audience if they can dig a bit deeper and make a contribution to a campaign that Hope's just started specifically to bring her to Australia. And I'll hand this over to Hope now to describe exactly how that's going to come about.
Thank you so much. And this is so exciting for me. So this idea began, I have to say that I've been feeling called to come to Australia. I have Fix the World and Hope Girl. We have many friends in Australia, many different projects in Australia, and I just feel like it's really time for me to come and bring my presence and all of my assistance and help to the people of Australia. And I had to take a little bit of time to sit back and say, how can I organize this? How would this resonate? And I put together a campaign that I actually just officially launched about 1 minute before we went live on the air today. And if I can just take just a second, I want to read a couple of the lines from the campaign, which will pretty much explain exactly what we're doing here. So the name of the campaign is Bring Hope to Australia and New Zealand campaign. This is a call to all Australian planet changers. Hope Girl and the Fix the World organization wants to come to Australia and hopefully also New Zealand to help you implement all of your projects that will help your communities and your environment. And we have a very special gift that we want to bring to you. We've been working hard on creating a platform that can bring projects to life, and we want to work with all the planet-changing ideas that you have to help your projects to help get your projects organized and up on our platform to get them funded and make them real. So here's how this works. We're trying to raise at least $5,000 in 7 days to pay for the travel expenses to bring Hope Girl and Fix the World to the countries of Australia. For an additional $1,500, we can also go to New Zealand. And if you go to our campaign, which I'll give you the address for in just a second, we have our full budget listed out there as well. This is an all-or-nothing campaign. So those who wish to donate, you can pledge a certain amount and provide your payment information, and your card will not be charged until we reach our goal. And then if we do reach our goal, all pledges from all donors will be processed at the same time. And if we do not reach our goal, then no one's card will be charged. So a little bit about what we're doing. We have a long list of friends in Australia and have planet-changing projects that need our help. and we want to bring on as many new projects as we can, and we want to do it in person. The types of projects that we're talking about is exactly what they have going on over at the Opal Global Village, community building projects, but also we want to expand this to new energy projects, spiritual development projects, alternative healing projects. The list goes on and on. The only guideline that we have for these projects is that they need to help the people in some way who need it the most, and as always, working towards fixing our world. So that's a little bit about what we're trying to do, and basically I'm putting together an itinerary. We're also asking if there's any host families that would like to say, hey, come stay with us. And if you have a project or an idea and you would like to use our help to get it up and running, please, send me an email. My email address is hopegirl587@gmail.com. So you can send any emails there for any inquiries about this. And let me give you the address for the GoFundMe campaign if you're interested in spreading the word and maybe making a donation. And one second, let me grab that address. It is www.gofundme.com/3TUURK. And we'll also post that in the chat room. Any questions, guys?
Well, I have one question. Your intent is to travel to as many different locations as possible and hold meetings with as many people as need to hold meetings with you to talk about the absolute details of what it is they're trying to do to get them going.
Yes, and a little more detail on that, and this is in our description as well, is I want to help you write up your plans, whether that's a business plan, and put it up on our platform so that you can then promote it to everybody in your community through social media, because we have all the tools and technology that we can do that for you so people will know about your plan. If you need to come up with a budget, I want to help you with that. Basically, all of those basic administrative skills, which is my experience and background. I have project management experience, financial management experience, small business experience, and I've pretty much dedicated my life and my skills and talents to trying to help the people bring these things out and make them real in a new paradigm fashion.
Yeah, so in fact, ultimately, writing out of a business plan and then slotting into your platform is actually stepping into the funding stage, because the platform includes a funding platform, a crowdsourcing funding platform.
Yep, so we can get you up on the platform so that you can promote your campaign and raise funds to fund your project. And the platform also goes above and beyond. We've got some project management software tools on there if you choose to use them, and just a lot of self-educating tools to help enable people to learn just how to do this. And, how do I take my idea and how do I make it real? And we've got all the tools, and I want to be able to come in person and work one-on-one with people, project managers, project teams. If you're just a person with an idea, we'll call you a project manager now, and we'll get you up and running. So it's sort of like it's like a one-stop consulting service where anything that you would need to get your ideas off the ground, I have all of the skills and tools and knowledge that can help you to do that. And I'm just willing to come and offer all of that to the people of Australia if you can help me get there. It's
brilliant. One of the things I'm really looking forward to, Hope, when we all get into the actual property at Lake Conjola, is actually inspecting all of the facilities they've got there and what stage they're at, because some of them aren't finished, and then just sitting down for a few hours and kicking around two things. One is how to actually get all of and they're closely related, how do we get all the facilities completed so that the whole thing is open and ready to, we can actually use all of all of the housing and all of the other bits and pieces that are on the property, and then what do we do with it? What kinds of events can be held there? What kind of people can come to stay short-term, long-term? The work they could do there, the kinds of teaching they could do there, what direction they could go in. That will be a fantastic conversation, because that will really get our minds stimulated about what we can do as a result of having this facility available to everybody. So, and I'm looking forward to you participating in that conversation, because you can take it to that next step and help people start to plan it out. So that'll be brilliant.
One more thing I'd like to add on that thought, Chris, is I do have training in facilitating brainstorming meetings amongst groups of people. So I can, as you're describing that experience, I'm already seeing myself, trying to help organize that and facilitate it so that it really has a more effective outcome at the end.
Perfect.
Very exciting.
Yeah, it is. It is. So we need to bring hope to Australia, folks. And this is the it's a really quick. I hate to say this, but it's a really quick kind of modern fast food fix we've got here, because this event is in a couple of weeks, and we've got just enough time to make sure that happens, because Hope will need some time to organise herself when the funding is raised, and I think the timing is perfect. Actually, I think we'll be fine. So if everyone who'd like to see Hope to come to Australia and accept her offer of assistance and get started on planning your own repurposing of whatever it is around you that you feel needs to be directed towards this new world we're working for, then here's your opportunity. Any amount would be fantastic. So,
as with a lot of things lately, it seems the timing is perfect for these sort of things.
Yeah, it's suspiciously synchronistic.
It's very good.
It would be interesting, almost as part of an experiment, contacting some of the airlines and see if they're prepared to actually contribute the airfares as part of the campaign. I mean, after all, we're talking about, repurposing and going to this new paradigm. So why not include some of the organisations that would obviously still be necessary in the new paradigm? I don't see airline companies sort of falling by the wayside. There's obviously going to be, services and products that are no longer going to be necessary, particularly in government. But I think that might be just a fun experiment, and if something comes of it, great. If not, we tried at least, and I think it'll be a lot of fun just to see what happens.
There's a thought. Well, let's look at that thought after the show and see what contacts we can dig up. There's such a wide range of people listening to the show, and if anyone has contacts in the airlines, perhaps you would like to drop us a note. And I'm not sure what the best way to do that is. Probably on Hope's Facebook page, I would say. That would be the most useful place to put it. If anyone listening has any contacts in the airlines that they think might help to make it easier for us, that would be tremendous. Always worth a shot. So thanks for that, Raina. It's a good idea.
Great idea, Raina. Thank you.
Now, I've just got one more announcement. There's going to be an expansion of what these One People shows are doing in the next week. Lisa's channel at this point is kind of full, and I've decided that the best thing I can do for the whole situation is to actually start up another channel, and we're most probably going to move this show to it and actually run this show from the new channel with some other new shows. That things that need to be talked about that we're just not getting enough time to do in the shows. So I'll be able to report more details of that tomorrow and Wednesday. And it does mean I'll probably have to pull back on some of the other shows if I'm going to get involved in more, because I can only spread myself so thinly, which is fairly thin at the moment. But that will make sure everybody knows exactly where to look for the next show, because it will probably be on that new channel next week. So same format, same content, just a different link at this point in time. It's sort of like the way I envisage this is cells dividing as the organism grows. This is what we have to do next, because as we expand this outwards, and I'll give you just an idea of one of the shows I've got coming, as we expand ourselves outwards to join the mainstream, we're going to bump up against all sorts of other folks and organisations, and we have to pretty much integrate with them all because we are the one people. I won't say they with us, it's just going to be a cumulative growth. And one of the shows I'd love to do is to start bringing in the voices from people scattered all over the planet, because we can do that on Skype, for people who are doing community work like we're doing in their own locations. And the fascinating thing is this. I more or less made this decision over the weekend, and last night I had a conversation with Trevor Osborne from Perth, and a gentleman from Quebec, and a lady from Siberia. And we had some conversations about their knowledge of communities around the world. And folks, there is stuff going on there that will just gobsmack you. There's a 5,000 strong community in Siberia that's been running for 20 years. Pretty much free of involvement with the government. You know, they're being very quiet about it, and apparently there are other communities as well. Not only we are not alone, we're definitely not the first by any means to have been working towards this and really actually doing it. So, and I think it deserves airtime by itself because this particular show, The Repurposing, has got a big task of really talking about how we transition from where we are to where we'd like to be. And, you know, we're talking about how the Western world would transition. It's not necessarily just you and I, but it does come down to community level in the end. So it's a big conversation, and the main issue that the One People Show will be dealing with for the foreseeable future until we resolve it is access to value. Plus, obviously there are other things along the way, but that's the one that's most prescient at the moment. So we're just trying to expand out the facilities for being able to have these conversations, and it's just what has to happen next. So having passed that news on to you, panel, we're going to have a conversation. Are you ready?
Sounds good. I can certainly relate to spreading yourself thinly. Even that show that we're doing through South Carolina, even though it's a 1 hour show, the amount of time that you get to cover some of the topics just seems to fly by.
Yeah. There's a slight chance that show will expand out to something bigger, which will be very interesting because we're speaking directly to a mainstream audience, directly. So the picture we're presenting is very from a very broad perspective and very focused on keeping it simple. And it's actually been a very interesting experience having to actually communicate that, because it's completely different to having these conversations. We can jump from something that's deeply geopolitical to something that's deeply spiritual to something else, all in the one paragraph, and this audience will get it, but the other audience we're talking to, no, they're all in a completely different place. And it's that experience is one of the reasons why I want to try and expand the scope of the conversations we're having, because it's made me extremely aware of the distance between mainstream thought and our thought. So,
yeah, I think you've got to take into account that there's different cultures as well, exactly, and different ways of doing things. So, what the repurposing, for instance, is going to look like here in Australia might take a different feel, I guess, somewhere else.
Yeah, and part of the idea of pushing this information out there is not forcing your opinions on people. It's simply giving them permission to work it out for themselves based on what they're seeing others do. Which is one of the reasons I'm looking forward to talking to the Siberian folks, because they've been doing this a long time under some very difficult and specific circumstances. And I want to see what solutions they've come up with at ground level.
Yeah, I think they might have some things to teach us rather than the other way around.
That's it.
Particularly if they've been doing it for 20 years, did you say?
That's what I was told, yes,
wow.
20 years. 20 years. And it actually came about really because of the collapse of the Soviet Union. The government the Siberian government just didn't really have the resources to administer these really remote areas. So they were almost left to their own devices to a point. And I gather there was...
Necessity is the mother of invention, is it not?
It is absolutely. And that's what allowed this community to grow, is that the government just didn't really have the desire or the resources to mess with it, and they probably, in terms of, harvesting money from them, there probably wasn't much to be had, so they weren't really that interested. But it's allowed this thing to grow, and it sounds like it's got some quite unique things going on in it. And I think a couple of very long conversations, and we'll probably be fascinated to hear what they're actually doing.
Yeah,
and it's
really
actually
interesting.
and it's not just Siberian. Apparently, it's attracted people from all over the world. Okay, it's people have, through the grapevine, have heard about this, and they've actually travelled to live there because they wanted to be out of the system.
Wow.
So it's interesting, that word of mouth or the grapevine, as to how far that actually travels.
Yeah.
In comparison to those who are, for example, we think we're fairly connected sitting there on the internet looking at all this stuff coming in, and yet there's this parallel information stream that's going on of all these communities existing in an offline realm, and we're completely oblivious to most of it.
And the other interesting aspect is that Nina, who was the person I was having the conversation with, made it very clear to me that they consider themselves to be, to have almost dimensionally shifted already. Okay, they literally are forming their own reality, which is essentially what we're trying to do for the whole system ultimately. But this is a ground up process, and things need to be reformed at ground level, and they're already there. They consider themselves to be living the new paradigm. I'm not sure how technologically advanced they are. It's one of the questions I've got.
Now, ground up, Chris, just to expand on that, we're talking like individuals actually taking that step forward and doing it for themselves, such that when all individuals or more and more individuals start going, it's coming from that grassroots level and not someone doing it for them.
Precisely. It's if you had a lot of funding, you could go and buy some land, construct some buildings, and basically invite people to it. Okay, and they could come and form a new life. And down the track, that may be the pattern that's followed. But at the moment, it's a case of individuals forming an intent, making the decision, finding the resources, and projects like Hopes and the Fix the World project. That's really one of the things they're for, is taking that intention and turning it into reality. Because it's always a matter of having the resources to create these things if it's something new. And one of the interesting things later on in this conversation will be, okay, I'm sitting here in the middle of a very well-appointed suburb with lots of resources. Why can't I do it here? And if I want to do it here, how would I do it? What does that look like? Because we've got massive sprawling cities all over the planet. And do we need to go and rebuild out in the country? We shouldn't. We should be able to repurpose the area that we live. And that's a completely separate and very interesting repurposing task that we'll be looking at later on, after the discussion we're about to start. So, Hope, did you want to add anything to this little discussion about communities scattered around the planet? Because you must come into contact with some aspect of that with the Fix the World project.
Well, yes. I find it very interesting that the community that you were speaking about that was necessarily more offline seemed to be more advanced in their community skills. And that would make sense to me, actually, because they probably have less of the influence that a lot of these other like big cities might have, as far as the systems and the domination and control. They would have less of that influence, which would allow them to evolve at a more rapid pace. So I think that that's a really interesting point to bring out with that. And yes, as far as bringing projects into reality, it really just, and when you talked about resources and having an intention, I mean, resources is not just funding. Resources is people. That's the resource. You know, that is the value right there, is the people and the ability to work together, some relationship management, you know, and just coming up with some plans and with your intention and your heart coming together. And I have seen it actually in Fix the World. I've seen many projects where that's exactly what happens. There's somebody who has a great idea, someone else has a very similar idea, they team up, they have similar goals and visions, and then people are just magically drawn to that particular community or that particular project, and people start to work together, and before you know it, outside of this system that we've been so dependent on for so long, people are finding their independence, and they're working together, and they're creating what they need and what they want for healthy, thriving lifestyles that this old system never really could provide.
Yes, it's the more you actually consider this, the easier it gets, because when you understand the process that Hope just described, you know, externally, if you've never run across it before, it'll look kind of magical, but it's actually quite logical in the end. And we're just seeing it over and over and over again. And is it just, you know, coincidence, or is it synchronicity that's kicking in here? Almost everybody that's talking about new paradigm is focused on community, or on a project which, if you look at it, would lead to community.
Yeah, and I think when we talk about technology, you know, I'm sure if you looked at the definition of technology in that community compared with, say, the Western world, I think they would define technology as more of an inner technology, because they have less access to the electronic technology that we would define as technology.
Yes.
So I think that probably plays an enormous role in how that community has evolved, because they've had to rely on their own innate technology. So they would be more in touch with that than, say, we would be in the Western world. And I think that's probably where we have to start moving from, you know, chat rooms and that sort of thing, to real action on the ground. And it's, you know, one thing to put energy into something online, but it's entirely a different matter to roll that out on the ground so that it has a real effect.
Yeah, it's the doing in the end. That's where the value is actually brought into our reality by the doing. Another interesting aspect of this community is that as a 20-year-old community, they will have children who have been born and grown up in that community. And I'll be very interested to hear about what kinds of minds and abilities those children have, because the Russians have always had a much better attitude to the development of mental abilities than the West. It seems to actually have been innate in their culture to a greater degree than here. And from what I know of our ancient history, shamanism came from Siberia. That whole aspect of so many cultures around the planet. I've heard that from several different sources who've investigated the history of shamanism. So I'm expecting some really interesting information from that conversation. And look, there's other communities that were mentioned in South America, for instance. And I suspect that the circumstances will be similar, that they'll be in fairly remote locations, fairly free from government interference at this point, and keeping quiet, not poking their heads above ground cover that much, because they just don't want or need the attention that they would get. But the message I got from Nina last night was that, you know, it's now time to start. They're more willing to start actually spreading what they're doing, and, you know, inviting others to do the same thing. So here we are, folks. Here we are, having this conversation. Yeah, it's brilliant. So let's move on to the conversation we need to have. Now, the whole point of the repurposing, in essence, is to, in our minds, because that's where these things all begin, is to move, is to create a transitional description, a sequence of events, and we can do multiple sequences, because there's many ways of doing this, from where we are now to where we'd like to be. And the purpose of this discussion today, we began last week, and I'm going to kind of restart that now, just to make sure everybody's fresh on how we're going to do this, and take a very clear look at the destination that we'd like to reach. That is, what kind of community, what kind of civilization do we want to have? What would it look like? How would we administer ourselves? How would we do commerce? How will we practice law? How will we organize ourselves at ground level? What does it actually look like? And my objective here is to come up with the simplest possible structure that serves our needs. We can have this conversation and have it in a very complex way with lots of details, but what I'm really interested in doing is establishing the simplest of structures with the most, if you could put it, the most appropriately simple description of the properties of that administrative structure. You know, what's its characteristic? What's its nature? We're all very aware of the nature of the system that we're in. You know, it's predatory, it's divisive, it's hierarchical. So, you know, we're going to use the best language that we can come up with and describe something new. There may have been civilizations, you know, hundreds of thousands or millions of years ago on this planet that lived this way. Probably were. But we don't have access to the information on how they lived. But it's been described to us. It's been passed down to us from tribal cultures who live variations of this kind of structure. It's been passed down to us from galactic sources. There's descriptions of how they do things. A little bit will come up. And based on that, and based on just common sense and by agreement, we should be able to come up with a destination that will last, that's actually, if you like, corruption-proof. And I think that's really important. And, you know, again, if you allow hierarchy to creep in, or ego to creep in, or, you know, negativity to creep in, you know, you could lose a civilization like that in that process. You know, it could fade away. And that's one of the things that I think about quite a lot. How do you make this civilization last 1,000 years or 10,000 years? You know, we need to strike a formula, if we can, that's going to lead us to be able to do that. So it's not just our grandchildren; it's dozens of generations of children that will benefit from the sorts of conversations we're having now, which is quite a thought. So,
I think a good start would be, you know, with that individual, because the individual actions become the collective actions just organically and by default.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the pattern, Rena.
Sorry?
That's the pattern.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, you know, perhaps we can, as individuals, rather than waiting for an outside framework, or for someone to come up with a framework, you know, maybe we can work on our own framework in terms of, you know, what can we do as an individual to repurpose some of the things that we are in direct control of. So, for instance, you might have an individual that is part of an organisation that looks after a particular underprivileged, you know, section of our community by way of donations or whatever the case may be. And just as a practical example, perhaps people should start thinking about, I can't remember who it was, I think it was Dee. She had done some research on some of the organisations that, you know, collect donations and, you know, use that funding to provide services to the underprivileged. And I think she found that something like 90% of the charitable organisations end up only getting about 2% of the funding to the people who they're collecting on behalf of. And so just as a practical example in that sense, if you're prepared to donate, say, $10 to such an organisation, I think we would be much better off. So now we're talking about repurposing. So you can repurpose that $10 because you're in control of it. That is representative of your energy, your sweat equity. And so I would be more inclined to take that $10, go and buy $10 worth of groceries, and actually go to an area where I know that people are going hungry and give the food directly to them. And now, so we need to start thinking in terms of what can we do as individuals to repurpose the way we live our own lives and the things that we're in control of, whether it be your business, whether it be, an online forum that you manage, or, whatever it is that you can repurpose as an individual. And I think that's where it needs to start, because that will organically evolve into a collective repurposing. I think the framework will start to become a lot clearer.
That's a really good comment, Rena, because what you just described was fractality, was a pattern which can reproduce itself at any scale. And once we get down to the other end of this conversation, one of the things that will become obvious is you could build this thing from the top down or the ground up. One way or the other, it will still work because it has the same characteristics. Like Rena was just describing the decision of an individual to behave in a certain way with integrity for the greater good by directly taking control of something which was within their control and acting, with responsibility and liability. And they're all characteristics that have to be imbued the length and breadth of whatever structure that you actually want to create. And if you get it right, that kind of individual action would be the same kind of individual action right at the other end of the scale of administration, where someone was not just looking after, one area, but, responsible for administering a certain area, a certain entire continent on the planet, and it operates the same way.
And especially if we're talking about self-governance, self-governance again starts with the individual.
Correct.
And, that's something that, each individual needs to take control of. So if you want to be in a situation where you're collectively self-governing, and that is respected by the wider community, you need to self-govern many aspects of your life, not just the legal aspects and, what it is that you participate in, but also what direction you take your own life in, and taking control and self-governing those aspects that you are able to take control of and self-govern.
Now, just before we've diverted slightly off where I was, the order of things I wanted to do, but Scott, did you have a final comment to throw in just before we proceed with my little thought description?
Yes, I was actually going to add a visual that you described a little earlier on, was the idea of the whiteboard.
Well, that was where I was going next, so do you want to give your version of it? Yeah.
So I think we've all been busying ourselves at one end of the whiteboard in terms of time spectrum, and I think the goal of today's show and probably many more was to have a discussion around what the far right side of the whiteboard would look like in terms of what's the goal that we're looking to achieve.
So what's on the left-hand side?
Well, the left-hand side is the kind of where we are now and what we're mired in, and like I said about earlier on, those discussions at the barbecue, which is like, this is going on and that's happening and government's this and banks are that. And whereas at the far right-hand side of this whiteboard, in terms of that time scale, it's like, well, okay, none of that exists. We're talking about, so what are you doing next weekend? Oh, we're going out to a community event over here, and we're helping someone build this. And so they're the sort of things that I think we were aiming for discussing in terms of define the goal.
They are, very much so. So Scott's description of a whiteboard is the framework of this thought experiment that we're going to launch into in this discussion, which is simply this, that we're going to look at the destination in isolation. That big whiteboard with us currently at the left-hand end mired in our hierarchy is a complete and opposite contrast to what's at the right-hand end, the destination, where we exist as a self-governing society without hierarchy, with everybody in equity. And we want to have the discussion without referring to any transitional elements. We want to look just at the destination so we can get a very clear picture in the simplest possible terms of where we're actually going. So if you can imagine the planet, there are no formal governments or countries as we knew it. There are simply people. And the people are in equity. They all have equal access to their value as humans living on this planet. So they are equally abundant, equal access to resources. The administration process that we're going to describe next is without hierarchy, without authority being wielded in the direction of the people at all. It is simply an administrative system where the people are actually provided with what they need to live their lives as they want to live them. So that's the basis of the thought. The system we're talking about completely gone, everything gone, just us. We're doing commerce. We're living in small, medium, large communities. There's an aspect of law practiced, and there's an administrative system. And the administrative system is practiced between individuals, between groups of individuals at the community level, and then between communities across the planet. There is no government as we would know it. There is just a form of administration, we call it self-administration or self-governance, which is the same whether it's practiced on a really large scale across the entire planet and all the groups of communities or between individuals. And we've kicked this idea around amongst us, and that's about as simple a structure as we can possibly get. And the first question I want to put to the panel, are you guys all happy with that description? Is there anything else you want to add to my description of how it kind of looks before we get into how it works?
I like it.
I like it.
The only thing I'd say is it's almost like you've got to shake yourself up to go and think about all of that based on not having experienced it in this lifetime or how many thousand lifetimes before, or for such a long time.
Hope?
Yeah, I just think it was very eloquently put, and I have a couple of comments as we move into this conversation, but I love the structure. It's a good goal point for us.
Sure. Rena, anything I've forgotten to put into the basic mix?
Well, I'm not 100% clear on where this is going, so I'm just going to sit back and observe, I think.
Well, where it's going is we need to describe the character, the properties, the principles on which the administration is actually run. That's where we're actually intending to get to here. Okay. And the test is this. If you can imagine a large group of communities administering themselves with this method, and imagine the same method being applied at individual level, then we've got fractality. We've got something that's repeatable at any scale. Okay, and if it's got the right properties, it'll stick. That's really, my objective.
Really, what we're talking is CVAX.
We are talking CVAX. That's, and I just see one of the reasons I don't want to. We've got a language issue here, which is there's two things I might cover before we'll take a little quick music break in a minute. Is language. It's very difficult to actually describe new structures without using old paradigm language. And it drives me crazy because the language brings with it so much baggage of control, it's difficult to actually use it. And let me give you an example. The word leader. Okay? A leader can be someone who just leads by example, whose actions and thoughts and words inspire people. But a leader can be someone to whom you've given away authority by nominating them as your representative, who gives you orders. So which one are we going to bring to the conversation? So you'll notice I'm trying so far to not use old paradigm words. Here's another one, contract. Most people go, oh, I hate contracts. We've been sucked into using really negative contracts with improper disclosure that are fraudulent. Yes, we have. And one of the lessons we're learning is that we have to repurpose the language as well. But for today's process, I'm going to try and keep that terminology off to one side, do our best to actually describe it in very neutral language, so we don't have to actually engage the problem of language in this conversation. We can just have a talk about structure. So I'm deliberately keeping it simplistic so we can drill right down to the characters, the characteristics, the nature of this new way of interacting. And, we can add words to it later, and we can repurpose words. For instance, we can decide that contracts aren't bad things. Contracts are actually necessary, which is true, because everything that gets done in a fully conscious society has to be done by making conscious accommodation arrangements. Accommodation agreements is another term, between individuals, between communities, and really at every level there has to be conscious arrangements made to which people agree to adhere. It's a very, very basic principle. But people are so phobic about the use of the word contract, it becomes a negative thing to even introduce it. But there are other words, for instance, which I'd like to remove. The idea of bonding yourself to do something. That is actually a slavery term. It's a useful transitional tool because people understand that they're making a commitment without necessarily understanding the origin of the word anyway. And, there are certain parts of the transitional process where that will still get used, but we arrive at this end destination point, and I'd like the word bond to be nowhere in sight. If you're going to make a promise to serve for the greater good, then let's call it a promise to serve for the greater good. We don't have to use the word bond. It's got quite a negative meaning, and we can simply drop it. Scott, I heard the intake of breath. Would you like to throw something in?
Yes, just had a thought pop into my head from a description that was given to me of a woman who she was actually sharing a story that was of an individual who was learning a new language, and it was actually a galactic language, and it was all done in, or largely in symbols. And he reached the point where he found that multiple words were used in, say, English to describe the one thing in this galactic language, or this one symbol. And like you just said there was that aspect of an agreement to help the greater community or the greater good. There's a whole bundle of words that encovers one concept, which in another language is encompassed by, say, one word. And I think Andrew Bartles even referred to the same thing recently about, or someone else, regarding the difference between English and some of the other languages is there are some concepts in English that just take multiple number of words to describe just a single word in another language.
Well, Chinese is a great example of that, and Japanese. They have
Greek.
Greek has just symbols that describe whole concepts.
Well, one word can describe, perhaps 10 different things, and it depends on the context of the conversation. It depends on the tone you use in the voice. It depends on the emphasis you give on the syllables in that word. So, one word can mean many things.
Well, in this conversation that we're going to have, we're going to keep the language really simple and try and avoid old paradigm words and proceed on to a sort of a point at the end of this discussion where we can look at this thing and say, okay, well, that's going to serve us. That will actually work for us. Okay, so what I will do is I'll mention one more thing, then we'll take a music break, and that's the term consensus. Now, we work at the moment we have a fiction called democracy where, you get it to 51% and you own it. This is not particularly fair. And I actually asked a question of Julian Wells about how the galactic races view decision-making Now, big difference between they and we is that they, for the most part, are telepathic and can actually discuss things at group level at rapid speed. So what they do is they work on a problem and come to a consensus, and it's usually over 90%, and they go to great pains to make sure that the people whose weren't happy with the decision were reassured that they were very important in the decision-making process, and that's just the way it turned out this time. They might go to great pains to make sure people aren't alienated by the whole process. Their ability to chew on problems means they don't just take one proposition and vote yes or no on it. They actually work on the proposition. Now, we attempt to do that here in parliamentary systems, and what I'm going to suggest now is that we don't need parliamentary systems to chew on anything. We can do it on the internet. In fact, we've already started, and it's a rough form of a rough technique for forming a group mind. We could come to consensuses by having very large discussions created in very large chat rooms for the purpose, and we could work on propositions and modify them and come up, and it wouldn't be a case of, okay, here's a proposition, what do you think, yes or no? It would be multiple instances of that same process over and over again, refining it so that the proposition itself was what we really needed, and in the end everyone agrees that's what we need, and so you get this massive yes. And that's the kind of technology that at the very least would have to be a part of running a planet in the fashion that we're actually talking about, where it would be technically possible to poll the whole population, have them involved in the conversation, and achieve a true consensus, or as true as you're going to get in a large group of people. And even if the galactic groups don't, they might reach 100% sometimes, but they probably never expect to, because it's just not reasonable. So from the point of view of how decisions are made in groups of people, I'd rather use the word we don't live, we're not trying to reform some kind of democracy. Again, it's a word that's littered with negativity. We need to work on a consensus, a community consensus, and any decision that affects a large group of people really has to be thought of in that way. Scott?
And you've also got the overlay of the universal law of do no harm.
Yeah, and on that subject, what we'll do, I want to take a short music break, or it'll get too late for it. We'll just do a 3-minute break, so if people could dash and just do what they need to do, that would be wonderful. And I just want to pull up something that's definitely 3 minutes or so. Okay, there we go. The one I was looking for is actually not on this list, so we'll just do a 4-minute break. So, and at the end of the 4-minute break, we'll come back and we're going to list out the characteristics that we're going to try to get to. Cheers. Okay, we're back again. That song is just like a breath of fresh air. Really like that. So, is the rest of the panel still with me here? Hope, you there?
I'm here.
You haven't drifted off.
I love that song.
Yeah, it's lovely, isn't it? I know Scott's here because Scott just put up the first donation on Hope's funding source, crowdfunding source for the Bring Hope to Australia project. So I'll be adding mine after the show, Hope. Hello, have I lost everybody?
I'm still here.
Good. Are you there? Are you there, Hope?
Are we back on?
We are back on.
Yes, I am.
That's good. That's good. Everyone went quiet for a second there. I thought the stream had dropped down.
I think we all did a runner while we had the opportunity.
No problem. That's what it's for. That's what the break is for. Okay, so we've set the scene and given a description of this destination, and we're about to describe the characteristics that will give us that repeatability up and down the scale of this thing to make it work. Now, Hope, essentially what we're trying to describe is a way that you and I could interact or if we formed a community, that our community could interact with Scott and Rena, who formed their own community. Okay, so if you and I were dealing with each other, how would we behave with one another when we make arrangements? What would be important to you?
Well, I want to touch a little bit on what you had mentioned earlier about how the galactics come to consensus because they have telepathic abilities. I think that quality probably makes their consensus-making process a lot more efficient. So along those lines, the thing that would be important to me with the way that we would interact with each other is complete transparency from the beginning. If we are transparent with each other and we basically, it's kind of like managing your expectations, saying, this is where I'm coming from, this is what's important to me, is this something that you can agree with, and just not letting the ego get in the way, just stating things in a neutral way so that we can both, work together in a collaborative fashion. I think that really begins with open transparency.
Okay, so openness, transparency, full disclosure of intent and need. Does that summarize it?
Pretty much.
Okay. So, one thing I'd require from you, for instance, would, if we make an arrangement, was that you would accept full responsibility for your actions. Okay.
I like that idea.
Would you do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I definitely would do that. It's a quality that I already possess right now, but I think that that's an important quality to have, and to have that understanding that each of us would take full responsibility for our actions. And maybe if we're entering into some sort of relationship with each other, be community members or whatever it is, we can have those discussions at the very beginning so that we can agree upon what that full responsibility would look like.
Well, that's also part of transparency. I mean, all of these things overlap. If I'm going to be responsible, I must be transparent. If I'm going to be transparent, I must be responsible. It's the one thing I like about the characteristics we start to talk about when we accommodate one another is things that are inextricably related to one another, because another part of it is liability, which goes back to responsibility. If we have an arrangement and something, say there's a mistake or a problem at your end and it affects my level of energy, for instance, call it money, call it whatever you like, it's a level of energy, then if you're responsible for that energy drop, then would you actually fulfill that responsibility? Let's just say you crashed my car, Hope. Would you accept financial responsibility for that mishap? Yes,
I see what you mean, and I'm not a reckless driver, but yes.
Yeah.
It would make sense that if I were to do damage to you in a way that would take away the value of your livelihood, because you need your car, then I would need to replace that in some way. I would need to, restore the damage that I had done. And that's how we have that equal value exchange with each other, that equal energy exchange. If I take away something that is your energy, it needs to be replaced.
Okay, let's put into the framework universal law that Scott just mentioned before. And Scott mentioned, do no harm as an aspect of universal law, which it absolutely is. And I'll restate the version that I prefer to use for these discussions, which is any free will action is permissible except a free will action that abrogates the free will choice of another entity. Okay, I like that particular statement of it because it's balanced. It acknowledges that shit happens. Okay,
exactly.
And that if you just say do no harm, well, what does that mean? Everyone's just love and light and everything will proceed smoothly? Well, no. While we're humans, we have a full range of emotions and we're having a full life and a full range of experiences. So some of them are going to actually come to grief, and so we have to, in universal law, cover that aspect of our lives on this planet, which that particular restatement does nicely. So in this relationship we're forming, Hope, what I just stated was part of it, that if we are actually if we embody that universal law, that, I can take in our relationship, I can take any action provided it doesn't abrogate your free will choice. Well, if it's your free will choice not to have a cup of hot coffee in your lap today, I'd better make sure that I don't do it. Okay? Or that if I do it, for instance, if I did it deliberately, I would have to recognize that I had actually done you harm and remedy the situation by cleaning up the mess. Okay, it's a very simple way of stating that if I embody that law, it just gets rid of so many of the problems that our society is littered with, because people don't take responsibility for their actions. And it's the sort of thing that, if it's taught from birth, crime just wouldn't exist. It's just becomes something that you just don't even go there, because you don't need to, and you wouldn't want to. So if you add, if you underlie our relationship, Hope, with universal law, and focusing on responsibility, liability, it leads to a trust and an integrity in the relationship which is virtually unbreakable. Would you agree?
I do agree, and I'd like to just add, when you said it eliminates problems, it eliminates them by preventing them. And and some problems, it's like, yes, there might be justice or restitution or any of those concepts. If you do wrong to someone, then you need to restore that. But what about in the case of the loss of life, right? Let's just prevent something like that from happening, and this is how we can do it.
Mm-hmm. Look, there are conundrums in this conversation. There are aspects that are difficult to answer, and I don't want to go to some of those places today, because I want to just set the framework up so we can have those discussions on the basis of the structure that we're trying to describe here, a robust structure that's deeply rooted in universal law and integrity, to the point where it becomes extremely robust. So you and I have an agreement, Hope, that this is how we're going to deal with one another. So how about we just formally extend that to when we do commerce, you and I, when we exchange energy, we're going to use a mechanism like the universal exchange to record our energy exchange, so that we're both clear on how much energy's gone in each direction. Would that be acceptable to you?
That would make me feel very confident and secure in our relationship, so that it's an open, transparent recording of that energy exchange that we can go look at any point in time, just so we can sort of check in and see how things are going. And if anything were to go in a good or bad direction, we would be able to see that through that recording. And that's the data analyst in me that's coming out right now.
Yeah.
There's a recording of exchange. That's where you can see what works, so that you can do more of that.
Exactly. And because it's embedded in universal law, an aspect of that is that you have free will choice. So the contract between you and I includes the ability to vary the contract by agreement at any point in time. Would it not? Because it's your free will choice to want to change the contract. I couldn't stop you. I can simply either accommodate you, or we terminate our relationship and go our merry way. And with no constraints on either. Okay, so the arrangement is continuously fluid and adaptable, with the same level of integrity as flowed through it. So this is between you and I at this point in time. And what did you want to add?
I wanted to add that if there was a conflict and we would just end that relationship and go our way, if we had a relationship like this with these types of guidelines, and we were like maybe the first person or the first group of people in our community to do this, after this has been done time after time after time, and people start getting used to this, it just becomes part of everyday life. That sometimes relationships just end, and there isn't so much of the drama and the emotion associated with it. And I can see how it could work out so much smoother and with a lot more harmony.
Yeah, and in fact, I just remembered one of the elements that I need to emphasize here is equity, equalness. Okay, we're all equal, so there's no one who has authority over another person. So in our relationship, in our accommodation agreement, do I have any authority? Can I compel you to do anything?
No.
The other corollary of that, Chris, is no one has more free will than another.
Exactly. So the equity cuts across, it underlies absolutely everything. So Hope and I have formed a little community here, and Scott and Rena have formed a similar community. The contract looks a bit different because they're doing different things, and it's all contextual. But we want to do some commerce with Scott and Rena. So Scott, shall we set up a contract, and what will it look like?
I think we could come to some sort of agreement there. Mm-hmm. We'd probably, I'd suggest structuring it on pretty much the same sort of basis as what we've set up, say myself and Rena and yourself and Hope. Mm-hmm. All of those elements are the aspects that we can repeat.
Exactly.
Just a cookie cutter from there.
Yeah, fractality is an infinitely repeating pattern that exists at any scale. Fractals have their origin in deeply in mathematics and physics in terms of the way they're expressed in scientific terms, and they literally look the same no matter what scale you have them on. If you drill down, keep drilling down, you see the same thing.
Yeah.
So when we do business, it would be the universal exchange. It would be based on an open, transparent arrangement between our community and yours.
To echo what Hope was saying, I'd suggest that the contracts and agreements that are conducted on that basis are likely to be far more successful, far more pleasurable to be a part of rather than burdensome. And again, just to contrast to what we have today, absorb the fear of some of those things as you described, versus I think the pleasurable aspect of going into an agreement with someone else and saying, hey, yeah, let's do this.
Yeah.
How awesome would that be? Let's go and do that. And the number of them would be, I think, far more successful, have less dramas and need external resolution.
Yeah, and I think the IUV exchange documents, I can't remember the wording on them, but they were essentially a template that you could use and make your own between two individuals. And I think initially, that's a good idea because it references the UCC filings and makes everything lawful. And it makes the contract, if you will, there's that word again, the energy exchange accommodation agreement lawful. And I think as people sort of become, as we move into the new paradigm even further, I think they will almost become, how shall I put it, irrelevant, because the understanding, the agreement between two individuals might just require the usage of regular language. And so what you said before about the importance of words, or, moving away from certain words, I personally, for me anyway, I don't feel that it's necessary, because I think it's the intent behind the words that are used. So, for instance, the energy behind those words, and the understanding and the level of understanding that you have with the other individual that you're using those words with, I think that's what's important. And so when we talk about the word, bond, for instance, I've signed an oath and bond, one people's oath and bond. So I don't view the word bond in the negative context, because I've moved from that, if you know what I'm saying, both as an individual internally, and that is expressed externally by accommodating the oath and bond. So I think it's a matter of personal interpretation of the words that are used, and I think we'll find that as the energy shifts and as people's mindsets change, that words will mean different things as well. And it may be the situation that we were talking about earlier, how you were saying that, the galactics use symbols and wording that, can mean so many different things. And, in our current paradigm, a word for some people will only have one connotation. But I think as we move as a collective, energetically and individually, I think the meanings of those words will change because the intent has changed.
No, you're quite right there, Rena. And I was actually not suggesting that we drop the words permanently. What I was actually trying to suggest, and I hope I did it clearly enough, because now you've got me worried that I didn't, was that we avoid them for this conversation and keep it really simple, so we don't get too bogged down in language and any of the baggage that draws in. But I absolutely agree with you. In fact, we have a right to repurpose our language to whatever we want it for. It's just another thing that's been used to divide us, and we can fix that simply by deciding to. Exactly. So if we decide we like the word contract, we'll use it. We could call it an accommodation agreement or change the name, but if we're going to take back our free will, taking back the language, to me, is part of that.
Absolutely.
So, in this process, we're, as I say, we're just trying to shy away from it at the moment so we can keep this conversation simple. Because the idea is to reach a simple set of characteristics and see how it can be used at any scale. And then we expand that out a bit to say, what do we call it? And then ultimately, exactly how do we get from where we are to it? Because that's the objective of this entire series of conversations we're having on the show. But, that oath and bond document that you've signed, I like that document. I wrote it, in fact, probably signed, and it has its purpose now. And if we want to shift the language, we'll shift it. If we want to call it something else, we'll call it something else. Heather quite rightly points out that all these things are tools. Okay, and tools sometimes lose their relevance. For instance, I don't use hammers and nails very much anymore because the devices we have for putting in really, really very efficient screws are just so good. It doesn't mean I'll never use a hammer again, but I barely use it these days compared to, say, 10, 15 years ago. And that's just the way it is with all of the things around us. They're just tools. So it'll evolve into whatever we need it to evolve in however whatever we agree to do. Because one of the reasons why I'm, for instance, not using the term CVAC in this conversation is very simple, is that CVAC was essentially the ideas of the trustees. 3 people. They're great ideas. They've stimulated an incredible conversation and a real shift in understanding of me, absolutely, and many people around me. I think Scott and Ken would certainly agree with that. We looked at it and went, whoa, this looks fantastic. But it's described in a particular way, and it's embedded in UCC law. So the language and the way that the contracts were set up and so forth is oriented around UCC law. But we don't have to do it that way. Okay, we're actually, in the context of this discussion and in the context of where the work of the OPPT went, if we've been returned to the absolute, and all hierarchy is removed, because this structure has no hierarchy, then we can actually make it whatever we want, call it whatever we want. I'm using the principles espoused in the key core principles espoused in those writings by the trustees to initiate this conversation, but I won't say to people, okay, this is how we have, this is a CVAC and this is what we're going to do. Yeah, that's one way of doing it, and I don't want to set limitations. If we're eternal essence without limits, let's be that, and just keep the conversation. Discuss the subject with a light touch, but make it very concise. then we can move on and make decisions about exactly what we want to call this thing and how it will be formed. So I'm going to stop ranting now and we'll move on to the next little part of this, which is okay, we've expanded out to many communities. There's thousands of Hopes and Chris's and Scotts and Renas inside communities, and there are thousands of communities that exist, and all of whom have formed around the concept that we're talking about. And we want to form one entity to enable the entire planet's people to actually cooperatively develop their civilization. So that's a big ask. We can't just do that with one contract accommodating, our behaviour between groups. It's now, how these groups in total are going to act together. So go, Scott.
I was going to say that's more along the lines of agreeing a certain set of principles to work with.
Absolutely.
And that's all they do is act as if you like the lines on the soccer pitch, so that when the ball's out of bounds, and you go, oh, hang on, no, we're not playing by what we agreed here. Let's get back inside the boundaries of of what we set up as to how we want to do it. Granted, we can change those boundaries, we can move them around. However, as a guideline, there's a starting point.
Yeah, and when we change the boundaries, it's by agreement. So we've got all these communities, Scott and Rena, and we actually have to agree on what we do to administer our needs at that highest levels. So let's just call it an administrative body. We could equally call it action teams. We could call it support teams. Because and this is where I want each of the members on the panel to comment on this. I don't see self-governance as having any authority over the people at all. I see self-governance as simply being administrative teams who are expressly contracted or have an agreement with all communities, all people involved to serve them, to help organise and provide things that they need. And that express this is my opinion, okay? The only thing we give them authority to do is ask us the question, what do you need? Okay, that's my opinion. Now, what do you guys think of that?
I'll go first. Oh.
Yep, Hope, go on, lead away.
I just wanted to say that I remember, Chris, when you had first put that out there, and it really resonated with me because it brings us back to that attitude of bestowing, and it takes away so much of the problems that we have with the way the systems are run now. So I loved how you put that, as far as the only thing that they can do is ask, what do you need? For those who choose to be in that particular position. And I know that there are many people that literally they live to serve. They find joy in serving and helping, and they look for the opportunities to help meet people's needs. And that's the role that they play. So I think it could work out really well.
Scott, how do you feel about that? By the way, feel totally free to disagree with me or modify it.
Well, I was going to add a little bit more on that aspect of leadership or leaders. In as much as you described two forms in complete contrast earlier on, I was just going to drop in another example from experience that I've had where I worked to a certain level of experience where I was working as a leader, and then I actually found I enjoyed working in a role which was not as a leader. It was as lower down the hierarchy, if you like, and yet I almost felt like I was leading that group. I was offering suggestions, helping and assisting the official leaders, if you like, by saying, How about we do this? What about that? What if this were done? And that as a way of leading was completely different to your textbook kind of leadership where you got the guy standing up the front. And yet I felt like I was contributing far more to that group overall, but not having any pressure of being the leader.
Yeah, one aspect of living the way we're describing is that if we embody it, we actually become our own leaders.
Yeah.
Okay,
exactly.
And I think that's another thing that needs to be imbued in us from a very young age, that the leadership comes from within to far greater degree than we've currently been taught or that we currently practice. And ultimately, essentially what the kind of thing that I would prefer to see is one where there are actually no lines of authority between us and this people who serve us. There are just lines of agreement. And they are simply agreeing to ask us that question of what do you need? And when they're told what we need, they investigate, present options, and a decision is made. And then they carry it out. Because essentially what people need from these administrative structures are usually large-scale infrastructure resources that serve the greater good. A communication system, a transport system, a treasury. Yeah. All of these things are just infrastructure.
And again,
I have a different... Go on, Scott.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, if you know where the lines on the field are, you can act immediately. It's not like you've got to go and ask for permission from someone further up the tree or in another department or on the other side of the country. It's like, act now.
Yeah.
Rena?
I have an opinion on the the question of that, only one question needs to be asked, and that is, what do you need? I personally, having someone ask me, what do you need? That actually implies to me anyway, that somehow I'm not in control of what comes to me, and I know that I am. And so asking the question or having someone ask me that question implies that they have the power to either deny or grant.
That would not be part of the agreement. That's simply a question to determine what this team that's been assembled is actually going to do for them. If you can think of a better way to state that, but, it's not a case of, you will get what I give you.
Well, like, how can I help?
How can I help?
An example I think of that is, with Hope, with wanting to come to Australia, she didn't wait, until there was an authority or a structure in place that she could go to have the question of what she needs answered for her. She put her intent out there, and what she needs comes to her. And I think, when we shift to this new paradigm, which I think we all are, it's all about energetics. It's no longer about the words. It is about the words, but it's about the intent behind the words. So we're playing on a completely different level. So I think we have to move from that paradigm of thinking that we need structures and systems in place, because things will happen without you even asking for them. And I'll give you a perfect example. There's a lady who lives across the road from me, and she's been living there for a while, and I've never met her, and she's technically my neighbour. And I was on my way to do a presentation I was invited to do, and I was just hopping into the car, and I saw her in my driveway, and I got back out of the car, and she introduced herself, and she said that she does some work for the community and all the rest of it. And she had a bag of shopping, and she had explained that once a week she actually buys a whole lot of shopping and she gives it away to someone in her street or someone in the community, and that's part of her participation, in the community. Now, that was I was so pleased to hear that, and I gave her a huge hug and thanked her profusely. Now, the thing is, I didn't need that bag of shopping. I think we had just done the shopping a couple of days before. And on the one hand, I felt terrible to say to her, I thank you, but no thanks, and can you please give it to someone that actually needs it? So what I'm saying,
again, it's not a case of, and if that's your understanding, I need to re-express it. It's simply a case of if you assemble an administrative group to serve the people, that they don't get to decide what it is they're going to do. The people actually tell them what they want them to do for them.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's really what I'm getting at with that question. And if there's a better way of expressing it,
yeah. Then my only concern with that is that we would be setting up ourselves for the same old all over again.
How? I mean, if these people have no authorization to do anything other than what we request, they can't of their own volition go out and execute projects. Essentially, what it comes down to in the end is that the administrative structures that are jointly agreed to by all communities are simply there to basically provide resources that serve all those communities. Not provide resources, create resources. They don't actually administer the communities. They have no control over the communities. They simply serve the needs as stated by the communities. That's what I personally have in mind.
Yeah, I think for me personally, anyway, when you have a system in place that controls the flow of resources or allocates resources in any way, shape, or form, regardless of how it's done, that implies the opposite of reality, and the reality is that there is abundance.
Okay, Rena, can I get you to state that in terms where the people have control over those resources? Because what I'm saying is that if we form an administrative aspect to our civilization that can only do what we tell it to do, how is it that they're allocating resources?
I think open platforms is probably what I'm thinking in terms of more. A bit like, when you get a software package where you can, like let's say it's a database, you decide, how it's laid out, what the fields are, whether or not you're going to have, activate certain modules in it. And I guess what I'm thinking more in terms of is something that is just a very, very loose framework that people can make their own. And I think, allowing that to develop organically within each community, because not only do you have different cultures and different beliefs and different ways of doing things and different ways that people interact with each other, I think it needs to become that community's baby. They need to be invested in it.
Yeah, again, I think I need to add something to this, because if we wanted to create for instance, a worldwide transport system that was beyond the resources of any individual community, but they agree to pool their resources to create this thing for everybody, okay, they would literally give permission to a team of people, say, here are our combined resources, and here's what we want you to do with it. That's what I'm talking about. What you're talking about, I think, is something happening at. These are things that are actually built to serve everybody, that are beyond the resources of an individual community to construct simply because of the scale of it. Okay, is that clearer to you?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, because I think we're talking at cross purposes here, and what I like to do is a couple of people with their hands up, and I'd really like to hear their thoughts on this subject. So let's jump into it. Okay, area code 734. Could we have your name and your question?
Are you speaking to me? I think you might be.
I am, yes.
Oh, I called because I had kind of a desperate question of my own, but I'm listening to this, and this is so beautiful. I mean, when you think of what goes on in our legislatures, which is all based on arguing, and it's just a show to make us think that something is going on for our benefit, this is a whole different way of being, and I'm just enjoying so much the professionalism and the brilliance of all of you people. But please listen to my desperate question. I am putting forth my first courtesy notice, and I need some help. And it doesn't seem. I think that's dissolved. I've emailed, and the email that I use doesn't work anymore.
Sure.
In
fact, there was a change of email address, and Scott will probably know the new one off the top of his head. What is that, Scott?
I think it's Foropack at absolute-data-exchange.com. I'll confirm that one for you and put it in the chat.
Yeah.
I don't know where the chat is.
Yeah, you're actually calling in.
You're actually calling in on Skype.
Yep, that's okay.
Yes, I am.
So let's repeat that for you.
I have no idea where to go to the chat, and I've wondered for ages how to get through it.
Yeah. Oh, that's actually, if you listen to it from the web page itself, okay, rather than linking in on Skype, the chat, you have to, when you're looking at the player on the web page, if you scroll down a little ways, you'll see the chat. It's actually further down that same page that the web page plays from. You know where you hit the Skype button to call in? That web page?
Yeah.
It's on that web page, but you've got to scroll down to see it. That's where the chat is.
Yeah, just if you go to the Absolute Data Exchange website, and there's a ticket you can open for assistance there.
That's the place to ask any courtesy notice questions. Okay?
Yes.
Okay, and your name before you go?
You're just so great. My name is
Thank
Susan.
You.
We're going to create a wonderful world.
We are.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Thanks, Susan.
There's a question from a user in the blog as well, and they're asking, didn't OPPT stop the use of legalese and demand only Webster or Oxford Dictionary to be used? And the answer to that question is yes, I believe that's the case, but there are certain things that we still need to continue to use because it provides the protection of that lawful landscape. And Chris, you might not like this, but one of those is actually the use of the word CVAC because it is protected within a lawful landscape.
Yeah. Oh, look, Rena, I have no objection to CVAC. I just wanted to, I'm trying to make a big point here that ultimately, down the track, we can make it anything we need to make it. I think the CVAC model is going to be one of our transitional points, which is part of the next
and I think we need to use that because, you know, we're still dealing with the old systems, and so when we're dealing with the old systems, we need to stand within a space that is lawfully protected.
Precisely.
Until the transition has, done its course, and we just basically blow up that bridge.
Yeah, well, exactly. It's as I say, we're trying to keep the transitional aspects off to one side in the middle of the whiteboard, so we can just talk about the right-hand end of it. But you're absolutely correct. We've got to stay within the lawful structure created by the UCC filings for the purposes of transition, absolutely. And then after that, then it's consensus. If we have consensus, then we can do whatever we decide to do in that.
That's correct.
And that's the fun thing. I'll just check with this other caller and just see what their question was. Area code 218. Could we have your name and your question, please?
Hey everybody, it's Daniel in Minneapolis.
Daniel, how are you today?
I'm wonderful. It's beautiful here.
Excellent.
Great weather.
Excellent.
Rena, I've been nodding my head the whole show, like everything you're saying tonight is just really hitting me as being spot on. But you've talked about so many different things tonight. Well, I guess one of the terms I think that maybe you've been searching for with regards to a number of the concepts you've been exploring with leadership and administrative frameworks and whatnot might be, from my experience as facilitator. Someone with all the political organizing I've been involved with consensus-based decision-making groups since the 90s, where we have people who are, quote-unquote leaders to, like, mainstream paradigms. I guess they were always trying to label us that way, but really what we were doing is facilitating the will of the group and using the consensus-based decision-making principles that we had been essentially professionally trained in to draw out the will of the group and incorporate people who weren't used to being part of decision-making processes make them feel safe and comfortable, and that their opinions were just as valid as everybody else's. And I've been parts of groups that have done that in the hundreds, and it really is. It's just a great feeling of working through really, really detailed platform proposals, for example, with dozens and up to hundreds of people I've been involved with in state meetings, and getting 200-300 people to all come to consensus on something that has a lot of very, very small details to it, where everyone's heard and everyone feels that they are satisfied. And if anyone really is ultimately still opposed to the general thrust of whatever the proposal might be, that they agree to stand aside because they've been heard. So, facilitation, I think, is a word that maybe you've been searching for with a number of the...
I like that word. And I think it's important to ensure that whatever group you're facilitating with, that you allow them to stand in their own power and actually encourage that, rather than take some of that on to yourself. Take that on board yourself and then use that to go off and do whatever it is that you've been asked to do. So I think it's important to not only allow the individuals to remain self-empowered, but to actually facilitate that. I think that's what we're really facilitating at the end of the day, if you break it down.
Yeah, and to go to Scott's example with, I love the sports metaphor, was perfect, because really what a skillful facilitator does is they're basically invisible, just like once you know the rules of the game, the parameters of the decision-making process are laid out, everyone agrees on them, the group creates them through the help of whoever's been determined to be the facilitator. But then once they're in place, they become kind of internalized, just like the rules of a sport, where you don't really think about it when you know the sport. The facilitation of the decision-making process is happening in a completely transparent and an invisible way, really, where you're not even aware of it, and everyone just kind of...
so almost like an umpire. Almost like an
very
umpire.
Organically, like was the term you used, and like an umpire,
Yeah. Great description, Daniel. See, that's the sort of contribution that we really need while we're working our way through this. Now, the stream counter on Blog Talk is a bit off today, and I'm not sure whether we've got 1 minute 30 seconds left or 2 minutes 30 seconds left. But Daniel, was there anything you wanted to add just quickly before we do a quick roundup?
Well, I made a lot of points, so we're running out of time. But yeah, I just wanted to be encouraging, and it's been especially the second hour was you guys covered a lot of really, really salient details, and maybe I'll try to call in earlier next week. But like I said, I've been involved with organizations that have really nailed this and have used it for a long time, and there's nothing better that you can feel with your fellow human beings than to be with hundreds of people who don't necessarily all agree on this proposal that's been made to them. And 15 minutes to 2 hours later, everyone is basically humming in agreement and is very telepathic, higher energy, vibrational reality.
Yeah. See, Daniel, what that tells me is we can do this. We can do this.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you. Look, thank you. I'll pop you back on hold. There's the 90-second mark, so we'll have to do a quick roundup. These shows need to be 3 hours. Daniel, thank you very much, and we'll talk to you next time. And
cheers,
guys, a really quick roundup from Hope.
It's just I have to say I've been checking my email a little bit here and there, and I've already got a couple of responses to the Bring Hope to Australia campaign. So some great project ideas are coming in. And I just wanted to say thank you so much to those wonderful, beautiful people in Australia. And great show today. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Excellent. Rena?
Yeah, me too. Really had lots of fun. Enjoyed the conversations, lots of different ideas, plenty of contrast, absolutely vital in the transition.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes it interesting and fun.
Indeed. Scott, have to be real quick. Yep.
Okay, look forward to next week's show and discussing more about what's on the right-hand side of the whiteboard.
Yeah. That's it for us for this week. We'll see you next week. We'll make sure people know where to find it. We'll continue this conversation more next week for the first half and have more questions so that you can bring your thought to the table. Thank everybody on the panel so much, and for the people on on the chat and all the callers. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.